Hello, everybody. well, well, it is Halloween, and Neil and myself have not been feeling too well today. So I had some sort of problem with my teeth. Neil looks like he's just been dug up from somewhere.
Feel like it, but there you go. Looks good.
Well,
I don't think we've looked this good for a long time, actually, Martin. So thanks for
as
that.
you say, I think it's done wonders for the colouring of our hair. We've both got dark hair now, but possibly
good old
enough
days.
of that. I think we should possibly swiftly move on.
Oof,
And,
even more shocking.
even more shocking, but restored to our normal condition, more or less. As we are normally fairly decrepit anyway. But so, welcome everybody to another edition of our Creator Cafe. Neil has been feeling a little bit under the weather and coughing a little bit, so I volunteered to talk a little bit more than I normally do on the show today. And we do have a wonderful guest to bring on. So Lindley will be joining us shortly. He's been spent a long time in the television world and the reporting world, and just recently I seen a really cool video that he had on LinkedIn, which is why I wanted to bring Lindley on board. So without further ado, I've got a few Halloween themed transitions. Let's see how they work. So who's that scary man?
I think it's you two. Who was playing the piano in that introduction? Because the zombification that went on there, I'm surprised your fingers were working. Hello, guys.
You can't see our hands under the keyboard. The keyboard's Neil. It's all Neil.
Amazing, scary.
So thanks for joining us this evening on Halloween and taking a bit of time out. Really looking forward to having a chat about the type of videos that you're putting out on LinkedIn at the moment. But before we get to that, perhaps you'd like to fill in our wonderful attendees. Just let them know a little bit more about your background, what you did in the past, where you've got to, and where you are now.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm Lindley Goulden, that's right, as a Halloween-themed Goulden. I'm a former journalist, BBC, ITV, Sky and others, and the founder and cheerleader-in-chief of Green Screen, which has been running for 19 whole years now. Basically a film producer, interviewer, journalist by trade, so you continue to do that. So filmmaking, we do podcasts, we do all the kind of speaker training. And we just get people ready to give their best performance, really. And then I go off, and I'm doing a lot of this next week. I go off and stand on stage and talk corporate. But I've also written a book called The Future of Truth and How to Get There, which is the story of mis and disinformation and how we can all fight it. So I'm juggling a few things at the moment, but this is the highlight of my week. To be Halloween themed on your program is one of my favorite things of the entire season.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you for that.
We certainly, I have enjoyed watching your pre-Halloween stuff on LinkedIn. So myself and Lindley have been connected on LinkedIn for quite a long time, since just after COVID, where we were having a discussion about how terrible online events were and things like that. And I think how everybody was being fleeced just after COVID by every company on the planet. To run online events that were very substandard. But because I was still connected to Lindley, I noticed a few posts popping up recently on LinkedIn. And what I really liked about them was that Lindley was able to convey lots of information at once in a video post in a way which is very much like I like to do, but even better. But there were a few things about it that I looked at, because myself and Neil and other similar people tend to do what we call pixel peeping, which is we're staring at the video and thinking, hang on, he can't be on green screen, can he? No, he's definitely not on green screen. But let's have a look at that video, or at least your latest themed video. So we're all going to be on mute for a minute or so while we look at Lindley doing his stuff. So here we go. If I press the right button.
Hi, I'm Lindley. We need to talk about fear in 3 simple steps. Look, fear is hands down the greatest reason why we're so angry with each other. Behind nearly every piece of false information, fake news story, every political division is fear and threats. And that's because disinformation creators know that the best way to change our views, our behaviors, our votes is to make us scared. And you'll know the feeling. We all do. It's all perfectly human. The fear hits and we want to stop it. We search for answers, find a community that'll explain the pain away that surrounds us, give us status, give us control, and we bury ourselves down a new rabbit hole. But here's a simple way to fight the slide. When we feel a really strong pop of emotion, adrenaline, your stomach drops or you get angry, stop, step back and sidestep. Spend a second cross-checking the information and extract the facts from one other source. Look, a cool head is a clear head, and we can all choose healthier information if we try. Okay, let's keep talking, and you can get your copy of The Future of Truth and how to get there right here. I'll see you soon.
Hey. So he says, just checking he's not on mute on this particular scene. What a fantastic video. I love the fact that what you're able to do is like literally exploit the human ability to take in lots of information at once. I see hundreds and hundreds of videos where people have just got effectively a selfie stick pointed at themselves and they're just talking, and then they think they've released a fantastic video on LinkedIn in particular. But here what we're looking at is multiple things going on in multiple layers, and you showing off the ability to let people read things for themselves, so you don't have to read everything out for them. People are generally quite good at reading. They've been doing it for a long time. So you can have things going on in the background whilst you're talking, which means it's a bit like playing a video on ×3 or ×4, because you're feeding all the information into a very short space of time, but people are able to consume it all on multiple levels. But I'm going to pick a couple of things out here that we want to ask you about, because this is tech talk, right? So when I'm doing my pixel peeping, I can bring out my little orange arrow here and point at shadows going on around your legs, and there's another one there, and some shadow under your elbow, and instantaneously that tells me he's not on green screen, because there's no shadows on green screen unless you're faking them extremely well. So that made me think, oh, I think it must be like one of these large white paper rolls that you get for film drops and things like that. But then I thought, well, I don't know if it can be that, because then if that's the case, how come you've got something behind you? Now, putting little overlays in front of you is no problem at all. But here we've got a layer where it says fear behind you, and then a further layer with the pumpkins on moving around behind you as well. So we've got at least 3 layers going on behind you, but you're not on green screen. So, and I know the answer to this because we've already had the discussion, but talk everybody through the process for creating this video, because all is not quite as it seems.
Yeah, there are a few layers here. I'll tell you why I did it this way, and then I'll explain what I did. First of all, I wanted to be stripped back. I didn't want any fancy studios or cool looks. I wanted it to be somewhere very simple, and then the text and me to do the talking. And also, you can see I don't change the angle. There are 2 cameras on me. I didn't use the second one, which is closer. I just used the wide, and I've got the camera here. I'll show you shortly. But so the principle was, look, let's just put out a minute or so of content. It's digestible, it's simple, but how do you put out a minute of stuff, because you can't cram in that much information? So I wrote these little scripts, auto-cued it through my phone, filmed it 2 ways, and just bounced back and forward. Now, 2 things that first of all, the visuals, and then second of all, I'll talk about sound, because it was a bit of a problem. So first of all, the visuals. I used a bit of software, which, sometimes you find a plugin, and I work with Final Cut Pro, Apple Final Cut Pro X, and you find it occasionally a little plugin, you think, that can't work, surely. This one does. It's called Keeper, Keyper, Keeper by Sheffield Softworks. And it's a bit of software that basically cuts out the human form. I it uses a bit of AI, although my system doesn't have AI in it. So where the AI is, I'm not entirely sure. But it's fairly good at cutting out a person or a subject from the background. So I've used that on a few commercial projects, very subtly. Essentially, I bought it and it was about, I think it was about $60. It might be more now. I bought it so that when we use drones, one of the simple under 249 gram drones, which don't have depth of field, you could still put a bit of depth of field in. So essentially what you do, you create 2 layers of the same thing, audio on the bottom one and then one above it. In Final Cut, it'll be the same in Premiere and others, and you slap Keeper on the top layer, and what it does, it just isolates the body from the background, and underneath you've got the whole thing. So with drone shots, a simpler way of doing it would be to just put a little Gaussian blur, a little bit of blur in the background, and hey presto, the subject's cut out of the background and you've got a little bit of depth of field. Very nice. I've used it a few times. Got to be careful because it's not perfect, it's not always accurate, and you have to tweak it, but it's quite a nice little effect. This one was a bit more of a pain because on the first video I made, which I can't put out, but you've seen, Martin, it's pretty jagged around the outside. I had to do quite a lot of tweaking of parameters, thinning this, like in green screen keying, thinning this, dilating that, making it stronger, making it weaker, softening it slightly. But I found a combination, and this went out today for Halloween to do with the book, and it's pretty accurate. So you slam this bit of software on top, and it does it. I mean, I don't know about you guys, I still remember the days of a word that has sort of vanished into the hills, rotoscoping, and it was just like magic. Yes. I've got 3 green screens. You can't see it. I'm not going to show them to you. I've got 3 green screens right here in front of me. My company's called Green Screen. I mean, hey, if I didn't have at least one, I'd be, trade descriptions violations. But yeah, so this allowed it to happen. So, but the stripped down nature of this, if I'd done it in a complex background, it would have been really messy. So I did it in a music studio, rehearsal space, under the arches, near me in East London. The final thing, which was a pain, but I fixed it using a new feature on Final Cut, which was very refreshing, was a voice isolation feature, which means that, because it was quite echoey, it's not used to record music, it's used to rehearse music. It's a nice space, big old white room with an infinity floor like a photo studio, like you said, Martin, photo studio style. But I had to isolate the sound because it was 70% me and 30% reflected me. So that really helped me to get rid of it. So that was quite a nice feature. And I know that Adobe have their own version of, they have their own kind of beta testing voice isolation feature, which I've used before. So there are a few of these out. They can be useful. There's nothing like recording it well in the first place, but when you're in a room by yourself with a couple of cameras on you and it's reflective sound room, you can't do much about it. So that's the full story. And I'm really pleased. I didn't know how it would work out. You try these things out, you book an hour and you start talking, and you write a script and you start ad-libbing it, and you don't know how it'll work. But this one, clearly, I don't normally put pumpkins in. These are layers. So the top layer is basic principles in 3 simple steps. Next layer is me with the Keeper on. Behind that is Fear. And behind that is a whole load of pumpkins from a company called Storyblocks. So yeah, quite a few layers. But you know what? Go big or go home, guys.
Well, definitely. I was just going to say that back in the days before AI and using these tools to be able to effectively cut you out, and the rotoscoping, for those of people who don't know, rotoscoping is the way of, as Linda said, just basically removing yourself from the background. But in the good old days, rotoscoping, you used to be able to have to draw around you and then next frame draw around, and this is what was so tedious back in the day. You'd have to do it frame by frame effectively, because there wasn't an easy way of being able to key you out, especially when you're not using green screen. So this rotoscoping thing was very painful, and there's lots of different software over the years that have tried to make it easier. But this particular piece of software you're using sounds to be at least half decent at making the first sort of cut out for the background, and then obviously with some finessing and tweaking that you would typically do with green screen and feathering and things like that, you would sort of be able to make it look as good as it does here. And it's really done a great job. And I didn't realize it was a plugin for Final Cut, which I'll be looking for now to see if I can mess around with it as well, because it looks really good.
Yeah, you know, I'm not sponsored by Sheffield Softworks, but it's worth it because this is a very interesting thing. I you know, we're all looking for solutions that will make our workflow a bit easier. You know, the fact is, when you're running a production company, as you guys will know very well, is that what you're trying to do is produce the best quality, I mean, really replicating top quality content that you might see in the movies, because your clients are seeing them in the movies and they think, or they're seeing them on adverts and they're thinking, well, okay, I'd like a bit of that, please. Now, look, when you have a good relationship with your client, you can manage expectations and you can say, well, this is possible, that is possible. But when you do find a useful plugin, you just have to be very careful and very sparing and very, very focused on how you use it. For these videos, for me, this is my project. Well, I've got no problem using it. I'm not trying. Nobody's, apart from Martin, nobody's pixel gazing. But Martin's doing that all the time. So, but
try working
yes,
with
you know.
No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly. But it is really, you know, it's a really good little plugin. And you know, long may it last. I've had it for about a year, and I've used it softly. On projects. I've used it with people with the Open University. I've used it with train companies that I work with. I've used it with a couple of insurers, just when we're trying to do something interesting. And often that just means if you're putting a name strap, an Aston on them, you know, Joe Bloggs from Joe Blog Limited, sometimes it's quite cool. It's just that little flourish when that name strap is actually behind the person. Magic. It's a Halloween magic.
Yeah.
It's spooky and unnatural, and it's really cool when it works.
It looks really good. And thanks to Val for putting Keeper in the comments to everybody, so you can try Keeper from the link there. One other thing I was just going to ask you real quick is voice isolation has been a godsend for me as well on some of the things that I've been working on. I'm fortunately in a quite a well-treated room. It's a small attic room in my house here in Portugal, and I've treated it the best I can, and I'm also using a dynamic mic. So the reflections and echoes that I get typically have gone away now, but I've had to record people in some crazy rooms here in Portugal. I did a small documentary on a house museum, and it was tiled floors, tile ceilings, concrete walls, and no dampening of any kind. And I actually found another piece of software that you may have heard of called Auphonic, which is amazing and it's really good. I mean, for a free account, you can get 2 hours worth, I think, every month of dialogue that it'll process for you. If you need more than that, and then you just pay for credits. But it's one of the best ones. I did a review on my channel on a couple of these, and it's way up there in terms of just getting rid of reflections and things on your voice without it sounding too artifacting. As you know, if you go 100% on the voice isolation in Final Cut, you can get these artifacting elements, and your voice just sounds more robotic. But Auphonic is also a great choice.
Look, only Cher wants to sound like Cher in the 90s, and you know, that'll do it for you. You know, I've not used Auphonic. I'm looking. Do you believe in Life After Love?
Yeah, but Auphonic is really good. So have a look and see if you can use it in your workflow. But it's great for cleaning up audio. One of my colleagues I work with, he inadvertently recorded his camera audio and not from his mic. So he sounded like he was in a bathroom. But using Auphonic, I just managed to make it sound a little bit more, or a bit more like this, a bit more polished. So it's really good. And there's a link in the chat as well.
Brilliant. I'm working with a client at the moment who will remain nameless. They're great. They're a lovely client, and I've worked with them for probably 12 years now. Big company in the UK, and they you know, they're trying to, as everybody does, they're trying to create their own content. They've got their own cameras. They're trying to send people out doing that stuff. But sometimes, of course, because they're not used to the environment of filming, which is pretty full on, and Neil, you know it very well, is they haven't switched the mics on, or the mics aren't working, or this isn't working, or that. You know, we've all been there. But when you do it, when you have to sort of go from zero to hero in one step, a lot of things can go wrong, and it's very confusing. And we've all had that. But the audio that came back was on-camera audio, and it's sort of unusable. I did try when I put the book out, the very first video I put out there. I did it in our local area. I wanted to do it in an empty space, but the wind was really howling. So I use the Adobe proprietary software, which I don't know whether it's got a name yet. Maybe it has. But if you look for noise reduction audio Adobe, you'll probably find this page to the Adobe suite, and it's in there somewhere. It's not actually a product by itself yet, I don't think. But it did get rid of all the wind noise. What it did, though, and since we are talking tech, what it did do, though, it made my voice a lot thicker than it should have been. So it sounded like I was it's almost like I was using all of my vocal cords. Really great, and I used it, but you had to equalize it down a bit just to get rid of some of that mid-tone and the bass. It was quite thick. What they'd done is take out some of the top and some of the end, and brought, they put the medium forward. But it was a little bit too much. But I tell you what, I thank them for it, because it was a great thing to. It's the first time I'd ever tried that, and that was only 6 months ago. So they are coming up on in leaps and bounds. But I'm finding Final Cut's voice isolation just very handy. We all have to be very. I was in radio for a long time, and you have to be really, really cognizant of sound. Sound is so important. People so often forget it. The number of young camera guys that I see out there now who, they don't bring the headphones. And it's, it was the basic thing, isn't it? If you're going to record sound, wear headphones. It's no criticism. It's just, actually these things aren't being taught perhaps in the same way as they used to be. I used to watch the best camera people on the block when I was in news, and you'd see them working and kind of go, wow, that's amazing. The speedy command of tech is brilliant. So, I certainly 20 years ago when I left the news business, or 19 years ago I left the full-time news business, I took that with me. I took those principles with me, the sort of standards, and then I completely messed about with them, as you do. But you bring them with you, and then you completely mutate them into something that fits your workflow.
I think it's the 80-20 rule, right, for audio. Sorry, just from my experience anyway, it's like if the video is really bad, then you can forgive that. But if the audio is also bad, then it becomes unwatchable, and people are just going to turn off. So I think we're living in an age where people have been watching so many videos, TikTok videos and things like that, and being on Zoom calls. It's almost become acceptable that, well, the audio quality isn't great, then we'll live with it. But it's not something
in all seriousness,
I like.
And Martin, I will give you a word in edgeways, surely. You can by all means jump in. But I'll say one thing, and I've rebranded very large businesses, and I've done, my agency does a lot of different types of work. Low budget as much as I can manage it, and small crews, and just expertise, not infrastructure. That's the way I always used to phrase it, and I'm sure you guys work the same way. And I always found especially when they spent a lot of money on it, and the sound hadn't been done properly, and again they hadn't thought about the camera might be just on the wonk slightly, just at 1 or 2 degrees off, and I'm just twisting my head to try to rebalance the horizon. What it does, and it's something that we can all learn from, anyone watching this can it's just a principle, is look, if you don't take it seriously, your audience doesn't take you seriously. They don't think you've put effort into it. I've seen a lot of videos, serious announcements made by adjacent clients, not my client, but somebody related. So that's why I've been watching these videos to see what they're up to. And they do it in a broom cupboard, or they do it at a conference table up against the wall, and the light's poor, and the sound is poor, and the sound is poor cuts through, because you're trying to strain to hear what they're saying, and after about 10 seconds you're not trying to hear what they're saying anymore. Yeah. Sorry, Martin. So please come on in. It's your show.
I can mute you both, don't you? So I have the power. No, what I was going to do is just follow on, really. And the follow-on question is just preempting something that somebody is bound to ask, which will be, what microphones, was it shotgun microphones you were using in the Arches?
Yeah. So I was using, and I will show you, if I can flick over to another camera. This will mess up your very well crafted 3-way picture, Martin. Let's give this a go. I'm going to turn on I've got my little camera here. Now you can probably, that's not too bad actually, is it? Not too bad. Okay, so I'll try and stay central. Right, so this it's a bit bright. I haven't. It's on auto settings at the moment, and so I'm in a dark room. You can see how Halloweeny it is back here. So I used for this video the new DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Now I've been using this camera. I've been using that camera for quite a few different things recently. occasionally a second camera, but it does the DJI thing, which is like a drone. The video is a bit too precise. It's not, you kind of got that very detailed, but not particularly warm look to it. But I tell you what, it's been a godsend on a couple of things. We've been doing lots of recruitment films for a company in the UK called Southeastern Railway, and I filmed all of the social videos on this thing because I'm going to do something else. Martin, you're going to hate me for this. I'm going to flip this around and go portrait. Okay, so I'm portrait now. And you can do all that stuff and it'll still follow you around. No, it won't until you, let me just, it's got face tracking. So let me just track my face. It's just behind my screen here. So let me just do that again. There we go. So what it's allowed me to do, particularly when you're running around quite hard with clients, what it allows you to do is to do something like the video that's on screen right now. That was the Osmo Pocket, placed carefully, but it's gimbaled, so the horizontal is very reliable. And you put a DJI mic through it. It comes with a mic when you buy this sort of the big kit, about $600, $700, £600, $700. But anyway, I just thought I'd show you that because it's been very useful. It's not going to become a first camera, but it is a very useful second camera. It's also gimbaled, so you can walk around with it. You will find that sort of up and down gimbal effect unless you're very, very special forces in the way you walk. By that I mean bend your knees and keep your arm like that, so you can dampen out all the
ninja walk, as they call it, right?
You call it the ninja walk. I've got
the
special
ninja walk.
forces.
That's what they call it. Yeah, yeah.
It says something about my psyche. Maybe I'll put you back on the main camera. Yeah, so that's the Osmo Pocket 3, which has been great. And I've got to say, it's 4K. It's really reliable. It overheats if you film for too long, and by that I mean an hour. I used it as a wide cam on a little shoot recently for the Open University again. And at the end of that hour, it was a long interview. I wasn't doing the interview. A long interview. By the end of that, it went doo-doo, overheating. But up to that point, really useful. So yeah, that's what that was all about.
And that has the little preview screen on it as well, doesn't it?
It does indeed. I'm looking at it right now. Look. I won't. Obviously, DJI is a big company, and nobody wants to get into trouble with DJI. But the first two versions of the Pocket, I wasn't a great fan of. I didn't have one. The reviews were mixed, but it was useful. It just had this niche in the market. It's delicate. It's not like a GoPro, but I've got to say the face tracking. There's a bit of depth of field. It's got a fairly large sensor, the HDR on it, and the movement is just so useful. I just plugged it in as a webcam. It's a fairly expensive webcam, to be fair, but no, to use it is really interesting. So yeah, if that's a recommendation that's useful, it's worth having a look at the reviews. There are lots of reviews out there, and I did that before I picked up one, and then through doing the book stuff and also going out and vox popping people on the street with a colleague of mine. He had the Osmo Pocket. We did one outside the front of King's Cross Station in London, which is a busy place, and you're not supposed to film there really, but we were doing it all domestically, not professionally, and so on. And nobody stopped us, and I'm saying that because for fair dealing. I walked past security guards; they weren't bothered. It was all good. We're not getting anyone's way, and it was absolutely fine. So yeah, really interesting stuff. And the miniaturization of the tech doesn't always work, but in this case, I think it does. And in terms of that bit of software keeper, for me, it's a keeper. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at that there. Even if I'm pointing my little arrow again, even under your arms here, these tiny little bits of red here. That's really good because certainly with green screen, you shadowing and things like that going on, you'll get little bits of white popping up, and I can show you that in a minute or two if you look closely.
There's a bit of white around my ears. There was a stubborn bit of white around my ears, and I couldn't remove it. Yeah.
I'm not quite, just right up at the top here. I'm pointing with my mouse.
Yeah, just there. Just there. There's a little bit of light, obviously, but it's a little bit of. It couldn't quite cope with the angle around there. It's obviously the pixels. It's understanding of the pixels. Perhaps there was a little block there that was a bit stubborn. Yeah.
Well, you're quite lucky in that you've got a follically attractive head for this type of AI as well.
It's too generous. It's too generous. I don't know what you call it, but certainly, yes. Certainly, I wear a hat in the summer.
yeah. I quite often find if I'm doing green screen, I'm sticking a hat on if my hair's not just been cut because it's all curly and you get horrible things going on. But
yeah, it's the wobble, isn't it? It is the wobble, and funnily enough, in this thing that I've written, the deepfakes are still wobbling a bit. You know, the synchronization of the mouth and the eyes and so on. There are still technical tells that you can see, very much like green screening. You know, which is very, you know, it's always very useful to know those things. But even though I have a company called Green Screen, it's always a pain to get rid of the wobbles, particularly with hair. Always. Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to move on a scene because I see a few people have been dropping in comments. So let's just go back to the comments.
So we got a question from Val actually, so I can bring that up first if you want. And the question is, sound is extremely important. So why do people refuse to wear headphones, especially on these types of calls and things like that? I think, Val, a lot of people are coming from as I mentioned, the Zoom era, when we were all in lockdown and so on. People were just talking on Zoom, as you would imagine, as we're doing now. But because Zoom's voice isolation, noise cancelling is so good, then people don't need to use headphones. I mean, I work with a couple of people who are on Zoom calls all day, and they just don't want to wear headphones all day because it's quite fatiguing to have a pair of headphones or even in-ear headphones for a long period of time. So, I think that's where it's come from. But obviously, when we've got guests on our show and things like that, we do insist that if you can wear headphones and so on, because it just makes the quality of the audio a lot better. You're not relying on AI to sort of do any sort of noise removal and things like that. So yeah, that's preference. But yeah, I don't know what you guys' opinion is on that, but headphones should be worn at all times if you can.
What do you think, Martin? I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And especially when we've got music playing and all sorts of other things going on, the complexities of trying to work out, you know, which person is causing the slapback. It's not echo, it's slapback. On a bunch of half a dozen people sitting there, it becomes a bit of a detective job. But so if you can just eliminate that by sticking in headphones, not using external speakers without headphones, that's the other main cause, is external speakers without headphones. Then it just is a lot easier, and we never have any problems when that does happen. But I have noticed a couple of people have definitely are with you on your choice of camera. I think both Jeremy and Val were dropping in the comments, were they? Yeah, the Pocket 3 really shines. Oh, and that's a good question. Do you use and apply LUTs or colour correction when you're using the Pocket 3?
Yeah, not yet. The HDR is really good on it, and actually, I'm an interesting one on that one because I still use, and I really love them. Although autofocus is a real problem, I still use the Panasonic GH6 and GH5 for things, and I will get the 7. Yeah, I mean they're just a beautiful. It's just a beautiful look. I prefer the look of those personally. I'm biased, but I've got lovely lenses. Got a couple of Voigtlander primes. They just look beautiful. So I actually still use those guys. Now, the reason I'm looping around by the Panasonic is that I like to color correct. I like to color myself a little bit. So I have every client that I've got has a slightly different look. They will never know it, but I know it. So, for instance, Southeastern Railway, who I mentioned before, when they're doing something, even if it's a sort of fun thing, I turn it a little bit green at the bottom end and a little bit blue in the middle, right? And make sure the skin tones are okay. And I do that with the Pocket as well. Now, the interesting thing is, it's a really good point. Thanks for the question, because I haven't, but trying to edit the standard custom on the Osmo, look, you take that dial a little distance and it'll go quite a long way because it's not going to cope with the color correction. So it's really good. HDR is great, but I certainly will be trying it. I mean, I'll try it for fun first. I literally bought this thing, and a couple of days later I was using it on films, after having researched it. So just for those specific social media style films, TikToks really. But no, it's a really good point. I'm glad to hear that. That's really good. I think that's the only thing. I think using the standard settings means that you really don't have. You can very much overblow the color, or it's going to accelerate into something you don't want to see. So yeah, but I think it's been so useful and so reliable. with that picture profile in mind, that it's pretty DJI, pretty droney, very precise. With that in mind, it's been really well behaved so far.
You're on mute, Neil.
I could see the sudden looks at, oh no.
Sorry, I was coughing before. Apologies. Keep pressing that mute button, and it's right there telling me that it's actually muted. But I don't look at my Stream Deck. Why? I was going to say the baked-in picture profiles for the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 are good, and DJI is always being blamed, I guess, for the over sharpening of some of their images, particularly in the drone. So that's why I think the D-Log M profile is really good, because one, you get the maximum dynamic range.
Yeah.
You can control a bit more of the sharpening. But I was amazed at your video when you told us that it was filmed on that camera with just, in the room that you're in, and just using the sort of basic lighting and just on that standard picture profile. It's really good. And it just shows the quality and capability of these little cameras right now.
One key light, bit of sound, and just and just framing it. I'm using myself as a commodity here, but I wanted to see the full body. I wanted it to be very simple. I wanted it to be slightly grimy, just very simple, and then the graphics going to take care of everything else. That pink I like. It's kind of a blood shocking pink, and I just think that's really kind of dramatic, a bit punky, really, if I'm honest. So just that very simple set of choices is all I wanted to see, so that you weren't hiding behind anything really, apart from Keeper. But yeah, it's interesting. I think the one thing that I should say about the Osmo Pocket 3, which if you've got one, you know it already, because of things like face tracking. If you go quite close, shall I do it? Shall I just go quite close? It does give you a bit of the sensor's pretty good, so it does give you a little bit. All right, this is going to be shocking to you. A little bit of depth of field. You see my veins, but you can't. There you go, bit of depth.
Yeah.
So you've got a slight amount of depth, which is really useful, and it does. It does make a difference. Not if you're watching things on the phone, but certainly if you're watching things, on a bigger screen.
Definitely. There's also a bit of love here for Panasonic, and I cut my teeth on the GH4. That's where I started.
Yeah.
And I still have my Panasonic GH5 with the default Sigma 18-35 f1.2 with a speed booster on there. I do, and I use it. It's on a slider over here. I use it, and I did my little documentary on there, and I, like you, just love the colors in it. The only thing that was letting it down as a solo content creator, the autofocus. It just didn't work for me. So I switched to Sony, but I couldn't get rid of my GH5, so it's still there for posterity reasons, obviously.
I have an FS7. I even bought into just for a useful wide cam. I bought a Sony A6400, which is the little thing, and it's it's very useful. Again, the precision of that, the warmth of that, the overall feel of it isn't quite like the Panasonics, but the Lumix 6. But no, the GH7 by the reviews has done autofocus on certain lenses, just like with the Sonys. But look, I've held back from the FX3 or FX6. I've held back from one of the A7s. Because these things are very, very capable, but I certainly have fallen foul. If I'm working with somebody who doesn't know the camera very well and they're using my camera, I've fallen foul of focus, and I've really had to work around that. So that is a problem. But I've got to say, when you get it right, the super slow. If I'm doing gimbal work with somebody, and we did a lot of sort of information pieces during COVID, we were one of those very few people allowed out to do urgent work with public utilities. Once you find that focus, and you often have to because of autofocus, you put it on a prime, and I've got a couple of Voigtlander primes, like I say, they're really beautiful bits of glass, and you put it on, and you're careful with your distancing, you can produce some absolutely exquisite shots, as if they were filmed on an Arri or one of those guys. It's almost like that, and because the Panasonic has such a lot of capability in terms of the recording format, you can do a lot with it. I'm very guilty. My hard drive. So I have I don't know how many hundreds of gigabytes of archive. Right. I didn't used to. I mean, I look at my archive list. It used to be like a 50 projects on a hard drive. Now it's 4. So I'm going a bit too hard on 4K and 4K 50 and sometimes 4K 100 frames per second. But you know what? It does look very nice.
Indeed.
Well, talking of things that are not going to look quite so nice, I had an hour or so this morning to play about, and I just thought, do you know what, I'm just going to try and do a couple of things a little like you've done on your video, but not as nice. But I wanted to try and do them live in Ecamm. So obviously what you've done is recorded a piece of video and then done some post-production work to make it look as cool as it does.
Yeah.
But I thought, I wonder what we can get in terms of live video with Ecamm and just using a bit of green screen. So just green screen transparent, and green screen is pretty good on Ecamm. And I'm just using at the moment, I've just been using this OBSBot $150 camera. So I'm not using a wonderfully good camera or anything like that, but I have been playing around with it. It's just to see, right, can I have things in front of me and behind me, and what would it look like? So we're just going to have a quick look at a minute of that, because I know there's a bunch of Ecamm people watching. So we'll have a look at a minute of that, and then we'll come back to some more Q&A and a little bit more tech talk. So let's go have a look at this just for a minute. So how to do way too much at once, basically. but really, the point of the exercise really was just to check, what can we put behind ourselves, what we can put in front of ourselves, how we can blend things in, and some of that's way too busy and too much going on. But it was just, can we do that live? And the answer is yes, we can do the vast majority of that live, including the last bit there where we had a load of guests actually in vertical video live. So today we are on a Zoom call. People who probably are looking at this would not think this is a Zoom call, but it's a Zoom call through Ecamm Live. So Ecamm Live for Zoom. But what you can actually do as well in Ecamm Live, as well as record vertical video, well, you could also do a live in vertical video. So the end clip there where you've seen 6 different people on the screen, that was a vertical Zoom meeting, for want of a better description. So you just set up Ecamm in vertical and then go into Zoom, and I can then record that live as well if I want to, and repurpose the content for whichever platform that I want to. But we can also go live to LinkedIn in that format. Now, at the present, when you look at that format live on LinkedIn, it's still going to give you sort of a little tiny strip down the middle of the screen, and it won't look particularly good. However, as soon as your live is finished, in playback, it will go to full screen. So if you're looking at that on your phone on playback, it will be full screen on your phone. And LinkedIn are now prioritizing vertical video on your phone. So They have eventually realised that people are watching vertical videos and that their age demographic is now 25 to 45, and all of those people are just sitting consuming stuff on their phone. So the idea is they're joining in a few years later than they possibly should, and jumping on vertical video. And I therefore thought, I'm going to start having a look at that, so that it's not the sort of dancing cats and, you know, silly dances for TikTok type things, but how much information can we get on there sensibly? And actually I found out we could comfortably have 9 guests on, and then have one who is the key speaker jumping into a larger screen area, and it works really, really well. So if people were watching that on playback, see all these people, maybe all the smaller tabs are in grey or black and white and the main speaker's in colour, or you're dropping in a little square video, so you could have effectively your square video appearing above 9 people watching it live, and then have comments as well. So there's still enough room at the bottom of the screen for comments as well. So I would be very surprised to find out that LinkedIn don't allow you to do vertical video within the next 12 months live as well as for playback. So as I said, one of the things that really caught my eye about your videos was the amount of stuff you're getting into a very small space. So I don't know what your thoughts are on further LinkedIn videos, or what response you've had to the videos you've put out already.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. I think you've shown me when we spoke. We hadn't spoken for a while. You showed me some of this functionality on Ecamm, and I was really impressed by it. What I liked actually was the prioritization and how much space was still left for information or for a slide or whatever. So I like that. I don't have Ecamm, but I am very interested by that. I think that's really, really good. LinkedIn Live, as we'll find, we're here. One of the channels you're on tonight is LinkedIn. So, you know, it's interesting. I've only done one other LinkedIn Live. I've not adopted it. I should adopt it, but you need that following. So I suppose the reaction that I get to my stuff, I've got a pretty big network on LinkedIn. I've worked with every one of them. So if they, as with social media in any way, and business media is the same, if they like you and they're feeling generous, they'll say hello if it doesn't conflict with what they're known for. So that's kind of the way to do it. I've been getting lovely reactions to those little videos, and what's been lovely actually, because I've been a producer, I've been a director behind green screen for a very long time, for almost 20 years. I hid away after leaving TV. I just didn't need to be part of that on stage thing anymore, apart from privately. So getting out there and doing this stuff, to get reactions from people saying, I've told my kids about that, it's really good. So, you know, the combination of the tech and the combination of what we do in messaging is going to be really important. I think people, certainly on social, it's a stage, and what I say doesn't really matter unless, of course, I'm doing something quite outrageous. I think what I'd like to see on LinkedIn is the promotion of interesting ideas. And if we can do that in a way that's presented effectively using the tech, that would be very valuable. I mean, that's a properly useful speaker's corner, you know. So that's what I'd like to see. I think the technology is very much part of that. People not like us, we've got an eye across the tech. People who don't have that eye, I'd like them to have access. I'd like to hear good ideas. Look, I mean, I've been speaking to, as you know, Martin, I've been speaking to TEDx, and I want to speak to TEDx. At TEDx, and you know, they promote good ideas. That's the idea. That's the big idea. So I think that you know, LinkedIn could definitely take that on, and if they can harness something like Ecamm, I'm sure there are other options around, but something like Ecamm, if it's doing the business and it allows me as a somebody with something important to say to get out there and do it, hey, look, we can only applaud that, can't we?
Yeah, and I think it is a place, a soapbox space, isn't it? And it's about putting out good content, which is always the key thing, is putting out good content. But I think my argument was, not an argument as such, but my statement would be, sometimes there are better ways to put out content. And the way that you're putting out content, as I said earlier, it's like a video going at 4 times the speed, because you're actually communicating in multiple different ways as you go along. And that can be as simple as something like the audio setting in the background, setting some sort of, like we've had spooky music at the beginning. Okay, a bit of that sets the standard in the beginning, and then we go on to have a little bit of video like you had in the background. Maybe London is going past in the background and there's a red bus, right? So they always have a phone box, the red bus, Big Ben, whatever, to signify you're in London. So that goes on in the background. You don't need to tell anyone you're in London then. But something like that in the background, followed by a big subtle tickers going on, very similar to what you had. I think it just gets the message over quickly.
Yeah,
and
I'm just looking at my TikTok. I'm looking at my TikTok right now because I wasn't, and now I am. And I'm looking at these things. The reason I say that is because what you're talking about, Martin, is telling a story. You're telling a visual story. It's what we were taught. It's what we learned to do, and how we and Neil as well. Just absolutely, what's at the heart of all this? You tell a visual story. There was that old phrase, which people watching us may know or may not, is that, and it's not true in my opinion. But Neil, you might disagree. You should be able to tell what that piece is saying without the sound on. The pictures should tell the story so effectively that you know what's going on. Now, that's not entirely true, because there are details in the story that you can't possibly put into pictures sometimes. Unless you're a lip reader, the person talking, you're not going to know what they're talking about. But the principle is good. Telling a visual story is important. I mean, mine couldn't be simpler. But the sort of the holy trinity of any video is what you're saying, it's what you see, and it's text on screen. That might be graphics, it might be just text. So I went with a very stripped down look, but it's me there, full camera, just leaning backwards and forwards and talking. And then the text on screen plays a very important role. What it does, not only highlights, but allows very simple messages to lodge. And that's what I wanted to do. That's why it works. That holy trinity works in video production. But underneath all that, and we've spoken, Martin, a bit, and Neil, we've met today, I really believe in the stuff I've just written. I really believe that we need to do, we have the power, if we can find out how, to protect ourselves. And the video is all these little videos I'm putting out. I will up to the US election. I'm speaking to the BBC on Monday, which is an odd thing. I've been on the BBC for 20 years, so they're asking me to be a US election disinformation bod. I'll definitely do that. I'll be happy to do that. That's really cool. And I want people to have the information that I'm lucky enough to have. So that's why, delivering it in this way, a minute or so. There was one I did a deepfake one, which was 2 minutes, because there's quite a lot of stuff, and there's scam stuff in there as well. But by packing it with very simple visuals, trustworthy visuals, which is me just talking, plus the words, plus the text, you're getting 3 conversations in one.
And I
How
think
do you
that's
feel
the key.
about? Sorry, Martin.
Go on, carry on, Neil. Carry on.
It was just a quick question about short form content in general, and as we're seeing everywhere now, all platforms are looking at either vertical style, short form content with or without captions.
Yeah.
Where do you think that's going to go in terms of messaging for corporates and the clients that you're working with? Are your clients getting more behind the shorter form vertical content? And if so, what platforms are they specifically looking at? We talked about LinkedIn doubling down on vertical content now, and YouTube just releasing the next iteration of shorts, which are shorts but a bit longer, being 3 minutes now instead of under the 60 seconds. And obviously TikTok and these channels prior to that were all about the short form bursty content. I know we're living in a situation with people now having short attention spans, but in terms of sort of the adoption from the larger brands and the corporates that you're working with, is that something that they're seriously considering, and how do you sort of work with that?
I mean, how many hundreds of conversations have I had with my clients who are often in communications, PR, maybe marketing, and then learning and development as well, right? So that they're your kind of key clients. What's driven short form content and vertical video, and not much is happening really effectively at the moment. What's driven that is the person I'm dealing with being a big social media user, scrolling continuously. So what they're doing is watching those really effective domestic videos that that make you laugh, that make you feel. Okay, that's what you're doing. It's shareability, it's engagement. Okay. Now, when you come to corporates, and I've just been through this process with the train company I mentioned earlier on, and spent a bit of time working it all out. I spent last Christmas looking at TikTok. Oh my Lord, that's a Christmas I won't get back. But what I learned is if you're trying to do things like recruitment videos, any corporate content on, in particular TikTok, because they're very suspicious of kind of outsiders, and I'm there right now. I'm looking at this stuff. It's a bit like Instagram Reels really now. It didn't used to be. It used to be much more specific, young people dancing and having trends and crazes and using the same audio and then doing something else to it. Now, it's still being driven by the people who watch that stuff. But we've been really successful on these things because what I insisted on doing was, first of all, filming it on like the Osmo Pocket 3 rather than a mobile. Everybody else is doing mobile short form, and it's a bit rough and ready and not very well done. It's not very well acted. It's just a bit much. Now, with a little bit of professionalism and a little bit of domestic, what you start to do is build up the quality of it. So what I did with the guys, and they're available online, you can see them right now if you want to. If you're looking for a job on the trains, you know where to go. But it was all about putting that person forward. If there's one thing that social video does well, it puts you in the room and it's silly and it's fun and so on. So that was the trick, is to, yes, get corporate messaging out, but really, really subtle, right? I love it. That's why I work here. Find out more. Simple. No pushing, no corporate agenda, no sales pitch. Just literally, here's me. And genuinely, I'm doing it. This is my video. I'm showing you. Now, I would help them to do that, and I would throw in a few things, a few ideas, and then, of course, it would look better and sound better and just be a more interesting experience. So I think that's where I'm really pleased to have done that. There is talk of awards this year, which is lovely because it's been a while since I was any part of that PR side. Really, it's a lot been internal recently. So I think we're basically there. We need to push up the standards, but not push up the sales pitch. I think that's where we are. And any client who's somebody's client out there who's watching, I think that would be the message I'd give to them. I don't think we're any further along. I think the stuff that I've seen that's been produced for corporates, for businesses, has been either pretty poor. There was one series which was excellent. It was airports, and it was a young guy who was so enthusiastic about airports, and he was out there. There's a guy, I forget his name, that's a Welsh name, who is Mr. Trains. He's Mr. Train Spotter. He's got an agent now, a top agent. So I think it's personality driven. I think if we're at Tech Talk, so if we're talking tech, what we need to do is to just push up the quality to a point where people believe that it's you, but also they get a good experience. And that means, back to Martin's point, having a sequence of shots, tell a story visually. I know I went a long way around the houses, but it's that thing. So it's really the person, the difference between social, which is vertical video effectively, that's where we are at the moment. You've got to bring that person forward if you're working with a business, and that story forward. Otherwise, you can do that with widescreen. You can do it the same way as you always did, and that's still good for YouTube at the moment. Look, I mean, yeah, I can't take you any further than that at the moment because it's gone beyond a gimmick because everyone's using it that way. But I don't think it adds much. One thing that I found when I was doing, this is a secret. I still filmed it in widescreen on the Osmo, and I just turned it square. I think square's okay. I really think square's okay for video. It means you can get some facts in there, and you're not restricted to doing the highs and the lows with your text and content. So yeah, look, I mean, Neil, I don't know whether that makes any sense to you. There's a combination to be had. I just think we can still bring our really good professional storytelling standards and do something really special and exciting and fun, and then it begins to appeal to real people who don't trust the businesses that are selling them stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like the point you made there, definitely.
Yeah, I think for me, the whole visual storytelling is where it's all from. There's a lot of people who've come from more radio podcast type backgrounds who believe that it's all about just the storytelling in terms of vocally, but there's there's a reason we go and watch films rather than just listen to the radio. You know, it's about a visual story. So I love the points that you made about that, and I think we're beginning to come to the end of our allotted time here, and it's amazing how quickly that has shot past, because I still have a bunch of questions that I would like to ask, and perhaps you'd like to come along and ask us some more questions about Ecamm and stuff like that at a later date. No doubt we could do a comparison
I'd be
between your setup in an attic in East London and Neil's in an attic in Portugal, because I think that's an interesting dynamic to start with. It's the Battle of the Attics or something like that.
Battle of the Attics.
It could be a title, couldn't it? That?
I think we'll go for Atageddon. Yeah.
Exactly.
Atageddon. Yeah, that's a good one as well. He's been in the business too long, Neil. That's a
I know. What a wordsmith.
We also ought to say thanks to Val for being in the comments on YouTube and making sure that nobody says anything horrible about Neil. And for putting a link in to Linley's profile as well. So there we go. As if by magic, the link pops up. So if you want to get hold of Linley, that's his LinkedIn profile there. And also it's greenscreen.london, is it not?
That's correct. That's right.
Greenscreen.london. And he will hopefully be appearing at a TED show near you soon. We will see shortly.
Who knows?
But it's been really good to have you on, and thanks for everyone who's joined us in the comments, Jeremy and John and Val and Paul and everyone else who's appeared in the comments down there. It's been a great little show. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll do some further LinkedIn posts which look a little bit more like yours but not quite as good. So we'll see.
Listen, you've learned everything I can possibly tell you. Now, Grasshopper, go and do it yourself.
Yeah, we'll be doing that next week, and that'll be it. End of show.
It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and we'd love to have you back for a second instalment when you have some time. And it's fun. There's so much tech talk. We can just talk all night about cameras, But
we could. Imagine that.
There you go.
Of course, it has to be themed, so you have to find a special festival of some sort, whether it's whether it's coming towards Christmas or whether it's another minor festival that I'd hey, but I don't mind wearing a hat, so I'm very happy to come back whenever the festival arises.
We can definitely do that. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll definitely get you back on the show. Okay. Thank you, Martin, for all the work today.
So I'm going to press the end of show button, guys. I can't remember whether it's going to end the show, but I think it probably will. But thanks for joining us, everybody. Hey, Jeremy. Hey, Mark. Thanks for joining you. All of whom are saying it's a great show and a great conversation, and that's due to the fact that we had a great guest. So see you, everybody, next time. Next Thursday, 5 o'clock, we have Lux joining us from Streamer Live, and the week after we have Saeed joining us, who's going to talk about OBS. So 2 further shows to look forward to already in the pipeline. So thanks, Lindley. We're going to say good night, everybody. See you later. Bye.
Thanks, buddy.